Many leaders and overachievers struggle with subconscious resistance to their goals, leading to frustration, procrastination, self sabotage, and burnout. Whether they are C suite executives or any other professionals who want to feel and do better, Todd Goodwin's tactical problem solving approach typically gets them unstuck in a matter of weeks. As a result, he's a valuable collaborative partner to coaches who want their clients to have the best possible results. Since 2007, Todd has helped thousands to overcome issues relating to self confidence, overwhelm, anxiety, self doubt, trauma, unwanted emotions and habits, and more. He uses evidence based methods that are far faster than talk therapy and easier than willpower. He is also among the few hypnotists, only 1 in 500, to earn the title Board Certified Fellow from the National Guild of Hypnotists. Todd works with his wife, Gina, also a board certified hypnotist, and sees all of his clients by Zoom at goodwinhypnosis.com. Todd, my friend, welcome to the Tactical Harmony Show.
Thank you, Rebecca. Great to see you as always.
Wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Oh, we're excited. We're going to dive on in. And I would love, Todd, if you could start off by sharing your journey and how you got into hypnotherapy.
Okay, well, let's see. I'll try to hit on all the touch points here. So I got a degree in behavioral science in college, although didn't learn anything terribly useful. It was primarily focused on mainstream psychology, which can be helpful, but I find tends to be steered more towards abnormal psychology and extreme situations and less practical, applicable, everyday challenges. So the origin really was during my junior year. I had a really dark night of the soul, I guess you could say, year. There were a variety of challenges that I was facing, health challenges. I was overwhelmed by a lot of things. I think the unresolved issues from my childhood kind of all coalesced, and the weight of all of that really almost cratered me during that year. To deal with my anxiety and depression and low self-worth and beating myself up constantly and worrying about things, I was eating a lot, pizza, ice cream, probably a gallon of ice cream a week, soda, typical stuff, thankfully not alcohol, like a lot of my friends did. But anyway, so I had gained like 20 or 30 pounds after having been slim most of my life. So this was a wake-up call physically that I couldn't ignore. But really, my grades were suffering, my social life was bad, and other than brief moments of enjoyment here and there, most of which was walking back to my dorm knowing I was about to destroy some ice cream. I thought about killing myself. I mean, I don't want to over dramatize this, but I thought about that because I felt like I was in so much pain emotionally. And anyway, so through a variety of different things that I did, some books that I read, some friends who were more mature and wise than I was clearly at that time, eating healthier, practicing some stress management, singing, and most importantly, I was taking responsibility for my own thoughts causing my problems, because I was, used to blaming other people for my issues, like a lot of folks. And I realized that however I got here, I'm the only one who can get me out of here. So I had to realize that it was my thinking that was causing me to have these emotional and behavioral reactions. So I changed all of that. If I had known my future self at that point, it probably would have happened within weeks, but instead it took several months. And basically, from junior to senior year, I went from like a C average to an A average. I dropped the weight. My social life improved. I felt healthy and energetic and inspired. And I said, okay, I want to help other people have the same kind of experience. And so I thought I would do that through nutrition, because that was a big part of, my change was stop poisoning myself with garbage. And so I went to get my master's degree in nutrition, and then was quickly discovered after spending 2.5 years doing that just giving people good advice about what to eat and what not to do is not going to make a difference for most people, because there's a reason why, which I didn't know at the time, a subconscious incentive to remain stuck with the unwanted behavior. There's a reason why people who are 30 to 100 plus pounds overweight are that way. And it's not hormonal for most people, it's emotional. And if you don't deal with that subconscious driver for that behavior, which is the thoughts and the emotions, then all the willpower in the world is not going to work, at least not sustainably for most people. So I left that career disheartened and discouraged and was like, what's the point? Like, and I kept thinking, like, if we know what to do, why don't we do what we know? I mean, and most helping professions, most health and wellness careers are counting on the client or patient to use willpower and rational thinking to create change. And it's a nice idea, but the truth is, as you know, Rebecca, we're primarily irrational and emotional beings. And if we expect that we're going to be like, robotic or computerish with our way of thinking, we're sadly mistaken. And that's one reason why people frustrate and get stuck in sometimes long-term talk therapy, or diets fail and all these different things, because they're only working at a conscious level. So anyway, several years later, after being out of the wellness field, I found that the most effective way of changing the subconscious pattern is hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming, which is related to it, and a few other things. And so I said, okay, I want to learn that, because I still feel like I want to help other people. Even though I didn't use that for my own transformation, it would have made it much easier. So I found a mentor. I took some courses, became certified, which is how it works in my field. It's not a university-based program. And opened my practice in Miami Beach in 2007, and been in practice since then. So it started off, that's how I got into it, because I wanted to actually make a difference, and do so in an efficient, effective way.
And what a difference that you make in the world. Okay. I have so many questions for you. We'll set the subconscious mind over here, although that might be part of the answer to this next question I have. But I want to start by asking you, Todd, the importance and the impact of childhood experiences. And I know you kind of referenced this in your own journey with unresolved childhood issues. And I see this so many times in my own coaching practice. Can you walk us through, in your experience and through your expertise, why what happens in your childhood matters to who you marry in life, your relationship with money, how you show up as a human and a professional? Can you please answer that question?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually don't think, in all the interviews I've done, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question like that. So, okay. So first of all, let me just briefly say that the subconscious mind it's a concept. So it involves certain regions of the brain, but just conceptually, the simple way to look at it is our mind has two parts, a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. If you think of an iceberg, that's a good way to picture it. The part that you see is the conscious mind. It's a small fraction of the overall iceberg. And it's the part that you might try to steer around. But the Titanic didn't sink because it hit the visible part. It hit the invisible part below the water. That's the subconscious. So our conscious mind is rational and logical and long-term thinking. So analytical, problem solving, and the things that we have voluntary control over is our conscious mind. And that's also good for setting goals. So with your clients, setting long-term goals or strategy, or intentionally doing things like willpower is all conscious related. Now that's important, but most of what we do and most of what we think, feel comes from our subconscious. Vastly more powerful. It runs almost everything that goes on. It's irrational, emotional, and thinks short term. Its primary concern is about self-preservation or self-protection, and also feeling good. So that's why when there's a certain challenge, we might feel fear, fear, anxiety, stress, overwhelm. Those are all just, panic. Those are different forms of fear because we perceive subconsciously that there's a threat. It doesn't mean there is a threat, but we perceive there's a threat. And that can be informed, I'll get to in a minute, the childhood experiences. So if we perceive a threat to our sense of self and our ego, then we can develop fear, which often can show up in social anxiety or fear of public speaking or fear of rejection, that kind of thing. It can be a perceived physical threat to our actual health or safety. And that is often something where people would get claustrophobia or fear of flying or that kind of thing. So, or fear of heights or fear of snakes. So these are things where our subconscious perceives a threat and then creates the emotional response of fear, the physiological and hormonal response of adrenaline and cortisol and all of those things. And then the behavior is either let's avoid those situations in the future to be safe or just escape from them if we're in them. And again, I want to underscore that this does not mean that it's accurate. It just means it's a perception. We respond to our perceptions, not to reality. So the more aligned our perceptions are to reality, the more grounded we can be. And the more disconnected they are, the more triggered we're going to be and react disproportionately to what's actually going on. So that's fear. And then the other side is cravings for junk food or addictive or compulsive behaviors. Like my example was, ice cream and food. Some people it's alcohol or doom scrolling or porn or gambling or shopping or you name it, smoking. And all of those behaviors are appealing to the subconscious because temporarily they make us feel better, either through distraction or comfort or dopamine signaling, whatever the case is. Those things make us feel good in the short term. They don't change anything, which is why people get hooked and they have to keep doing it. So those are short-term solutions to a persistent problem. The subconscious is not the devil. It's not our enemy. It's our friend, but it's governing short-term needs. So we judge it consciously and say, God, I'm such an idiot. Why do I keep doing that? I've just gained another pound just to feel good for a half hour. I'm so stupid. Well, the more we feel guilty and ashamed, the more we need to do something to feel good, and then the cycle repeats. So anyway, the subconscious is, if we feel bad, it says, what can we do to feel good? And then it finds a behavior or a chemical. If it perceives we're in danger, it says, how can I be safe? And that's really what it does. Everything else is just built on that. Now, the reason why childhood issues are important, and in my experience of 19 years, it's the vast majority of people, the core, the roots of the weeds that are growing in the garden of their mind, let's say, the roots are their thoughts about something that's happened to them in the past. And most of the time it is childhood or adolescent experiences. You might loosely call that trauma. Doesn't mean it's PTSD, but any emotionally distressing experience, and most people have had several of those, that we haven't effectively integrated into our self and we haven't resolved naturally. And so those things are still running in the background like an app on your phone that you might have opened 6 months ago or 20 years ago, but you don't ever use consciously, but you never shut it off. And then you wonder why your phone's not operating as well as it could, because you probably have a dozen of those apps running. And until or unless you shut them down, your phone's processor and battery is going to be in service of those things. And in a way, unresolved trauma is the same thing. And so when people as a child are imprinted negatively by some threatening experience, their subconscious, which also involves their nervous system, learns that the world is not safe. It develops a belief that says, I'm not safe, or I'm not worthy of love, or I'm not good enough. Those are chiefly the three main core beliefs that cause problems for people, simply because of what happened to them as a child. Dad yelled at them or hit them, or their parents got divorced when they were young and they thought it was their fault, or they, got bullied, or whatever it might be, or molested. So something happened that caused the child to form beliefs. And then those beliefs create shame or anxiety or some emotional response. And that becomes habitual because as long as that belief and the subconscious governs beliefs and habits and emotions and memories, as long as that belief is established and stays in the subconscious, then it's going to continue to create an emotional response, which is going to continue to beg for some behavioral response, fight or flight, or consume some behavior or chemical. And so that pattern persists. And when people try to use willpower or logical thinking or simply talking about it, those can help temporarily, but usually they're not very effective or efficient because they're all operating at a conscious level. So we may know why we have a problem or why we're doing something or how we got, quote, screwed up. And that nearly everyone that happens, when they're before they're 18 at some point. But just knowing it, revelation is not resolution. This is what I often say. So just knowing it is not usually going to change it. We need to change the belief system at the subconscious because that is the core cause of the person's problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I affectionately call it the operating system
Yep.
or a blueprint, and it's, overcoming that analytical mind to get into your battery, your operating system and see what's going on. And it's work, right? It's the stuff that, you got to put your foot on the gas and kind of see what goes on. And as you referenced earlier in our conversation, Todd, it could mean the dark night of the soul. And I know very candidly and personally speaking, I've had that and really kind of looking inward and why am I this way and why do I always seek perfection or why do I feel like I, need to control the outcome of something when I know that's not in my control, yet I'm still so darn persistent, right? And then, this journey of really making peace with the process and as Dr. Joe Dispenza, whom I reference quite a bit because I
Mhm.
study meditation under him, it's the overcoming is the becoming process. And there's so much liberation and freed energy when you kind of get to that sweet spot. And as you said, the revelation, but that's not the resolution. And there's more stuff to do. So
Oh,
that,
can I just, sorry to
oh,
interrupt you. I realized that
no,
part of what
no.
you asked, I didn't tie it all together. So if someone grows up with the belief that I'm not safe, and then anxiety and fear in all of its forms is the logical or is the effect of that,
Mhm.
then they may make decisions in life, financially, career, relationship, in order to give them the illusion of safety. So they may stay in a career or a job or a relationship where they are not necessarily meeting their long-term needs. It may not be, quote, good for them. Obviously, it is providing a sense of security, so it is good for them. But even if someone's in an abusive relationship, if that person tells them, I love you, or is a warm body in the bed, or takes care of some financial needs, whatever it might be, if that person ironically feels safe with that, then they will put up with what most people from the outside will be like, why are you doing that? And so we're doing those things not because we're stupid, but because we have multiple needs on multiple levels. And if the belief I'm not safe, like in terms of who I am, or I'm not worthy of love, but someone says I love you, we're going to stick with that person. So people will often make choices in their life based on their sense of worthiness and based on their sense of um, enoughness and based on safety. And the important thing to call back what I said before, Rebecca, is that those are seldom accurate assessments of what's really going on. The things that happen to us earlier in life, and the reason I typically call out the childhood part is because it's easier to traumatize or imprint a child than it is an adult. You need to have a more objectively major thing happen as an adult for that to leave a lasting imprint. But with kids, it's much easier. So when when we have those imprints, like I said, it forms beliefs. But another way to look at it is it creates a filter that we interpret information and all kinds of experiences through that filter. The filter becomes colored by our experiences, and so we can't necessarily see things clearly. And everything we go through has to pass through that filter. It's the same thing with any belief system. People who are very religious have a certain belief system. People who have certain, whatever it might be, it's not about right or wrong. It's just if someone has strong beliefs about something, the world they live in has to get through that and is colored or filtered. And so they're going to be interpreting and responding and giving meaning to something that may be very different from what someone next to them might actually interpret. So what I effectively do, simply using hypnosis and neurolinguistics and other subconscious modalities, is simply helping people unlearn these limiting or disempowering belief systems. So effectively peeling away the color that is impairing their ability to respond effectively or to see things clearly. And that's basically, it's dehypnotizing people.
Yeah, this topic has come up before. The unlearning is
Yeah.
the learning process. And before I go to my next question, I wanted to underscore one thing is the application of meaning that we put on something. As you said, the filter, kind of like what we're looking through, and the colors, and it's tainted. It reminds me of this. I guess you can call it an analogy that if we have somebody that we dislike greatly, let's just say, and they're making you a cup of coffee and they accidentally put salt instead of sugar in your coffee and they give it to you, you're going to say, see, they did it on purpose because they hate me and they're just wretched, and, insert whatever colorful word you want to use.
Yeah.
However, let's say someone that you love and adore and admire makes you a cup of coffee and accidentally puts salt instead of sugar, and they hand you the coffee and you take a sip. You're like, oh, it was an accident. They would never, ever intentionally put salt in my coffee, right?
Yeah.
And I love that analogy because it applies to what you were saying so much, that, how we define and label any kind of situation or circumstance or person is going to dictate how we're showing up, how we're acting, how we're thinking, and how we're feeling. And so I always like to give that analogy because it's so true. And I know I've been guilty of that in the past. So I always like to kind of bring it to my conscious mind and keep reminding myself of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, my next question for you, Todd, is let's say mechanically someone has gone through the hypnotherapy, has gone through the NLP and all of these amazing tools and the framework that you have. And now they're kind of being able to see the trees in the forest a little bit, right? So
Yep.
they're recognizing and they're starting to, the aha, the moment of reckoning. What, and this might be a loaded question, but please do your best to answer it.
Sure.
What is something, Todd, that they can do to start improving their lives once they realize, oh, it was that one moment or that one thing when I was a kid or a teenager? And they're like, okay, so now I'm ready to get better. I want to actually feel better and show up differently. Once they've gone through that, what is something they can start doing immediately to start to feel better?
Y- you mean after I've worked with someone after they've done it?
Yes.
Well, maybe I don't fully understand the question because typically when I work with people, and Gina the same, we work with the same kind of clients and
Mhm.
same approach. Most of our clients we see over the course of several weeks, so it's not a
Mhm.
long-term
Love that.
engagement. It's very tactical and very solutions and outcome focused. So we're it's kind of like the special forces. Like we drop in, we clear whatever needs to be cleared, and then we get out, and we leave someone else to do the nation building. We don't do that. We just go in and clear the clog basically. But so the person usually is, during the course of the time we're working with them, and almost always by the end, it's certainly that's the goal. Um, the needle has moved enough in the direction of whatever they want to accomplish to where they're feeling significantly better or more aligned or more grounded or whatever the outcome is, um, more adaptable, more decisive, more confident, less anxious, less reactive, less grieving or whatever it is. So they're already feeling better. That's so I'm not sure what more you are asking. I might be missing part of your question.
Yeah, no. You definitely know answered it. And perhaps maybe a more specific question that I could ask is, after your hypnotherapy and the program, however many weeks,
Yep.
what are things that they should continue to do? So is it an immediate, okay, no more hypnotherapy, no more like, or is there something that you give them as like, I'll say homework, so to speak, or things to kind of keep them continuing on that path of emotional regulation? The pathway is cleared and they're feeling better, but they can maintain that.
Okay, now I understand. That's a really good question. And that raises that, so I need to make a distinction here between, again, the conscious level interventions, which are important and complement the subconscious work that we do. Is that if you go back to the notion of a belief or habitual thought pattern creates an emotional response. For example, I'm not safe. Doesn't matter whether it's real or not. The belief I'm not safe either around men, or I'm not safe on planes, or I'm not safe on the planet. Okay. That creates some form of fear emotionally as a response. As long as that belief is there, there is a tendency to react with fear. And then there may be a behavioral response to that. As I said before, when that belief changes to I am safe, obviously within reason, if they're going into a war zone, then rationally they may not be safe, but there then needs to be an ability to believe in resilience. I have the ability to adapt and I can handle myself. And not this is not Pollyanna positive thinking, because that's delusional. We don't want to be one-sided in negative or positive. It is real reality-based thinking and saying, okay, I have the skills, I have the ability to respond, I have the resilience, the competence, whatever it is, and so I can trust myself to handle that. When someone develops that as the belief, as an alternative to I'm not safe, then the anxiety is gone, presumably, at least from that. There is a calm, relaxed confidence that typically replaces that. So immediately they're operating, as you said, operating system, they're operating at they've upgraded the mental software. They're operating on different instructions subconsciously. So there's nothing they actually need to do consciously to maintain that, because they're living based on different instructions in their mind. Now, the thing is, during the time we work with people, we do give them homework. Most of it is not work; it's enjoyable. But it would be like listening to a hypnosis recording every day for a week or so until we create a new one for them, and then listen to that one for a week or two, and then other exercises or techniques, whether we're doing one-on-one work in real time, clearing trauma, or helping them balance their perceptions of things, or stuff they do at home. But by the time we're done, the goal is, and we usually hit the target, enough of that change has taken place to where it's self-sustaining. And that's the key. This is not something where someone has to constantly, count to 10 before they have a conversation with someone that challenges them, or they have to take 5 deep breaths before they give a presentation. When people have to cope, it's because they haven't changed the underlying programming. Once that's changed, then the response is just as automatic as when the disempowering or limiting belief was there. And that's what makes this a great alternative to a lot of or complement, depending on what the goal is. But if someone is in therapy, which is useful for certainly for some people, and their goal is, I want to change something within me so I don't have to constantly think about it. So I can spend my conscious mind and attention focusing on real problem solving and real challenges and real goals, and not self-governance. If they really want to automate self-governance and change what's going on within themselves and how they interact with the world without having to think about it, that's where the subconscious work is gold.
That's incredible. And I really appreciate you really highlighting that distinction, because I think for a lot of people that may not be familiar with hypnotherapy or have never done it, they could view it, and I'm not comparing it to like going to the gym, but I'll just say, hey, I have, 20 pounds I want to lose, and I go through this program at the gym, and okay, great, my program's done. So now when I'm back at the house, well, you got to keep doing stuff, right? Like you
Yep.
can't eat trash and not move your body because the weight probably will come back. So I really wanted to underscore that for our audience that when you do this, then it's everlasting. And like you said, through the program, you're immediately feeling better. So when
Yeah.
your program is done, and I love the special forces reference, and you guys are up and out, you and Gina are up and out.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, you've done it. This is amazing, right? And that's not to say that you're not going to encounter a challenge or a problem
Sure.
because another level, another double, and future you is waiting for you to harness a new skill or whatever that could be. But the doing this subconscious level work that Todd and his wife do is where the rubber meets the road. It is absolutely incredible. So,
I mean, essentially, though, Rebecca, I mean, another way to look at this, and I don't want to get into all the debunking the misconceptions about hypnosis, because that is what, unfortunately, due to media misrepresentation and all of that going back over a century, people misunderstand and they fear hypnosis, or they think it's a comedy routine or something like that. The truth is, the easiest way to think about it is hypnosis is, and using that is one of several tools we use. So that's not all we do, but hypnosis is a state of speed learning, a state of heightened receptivity. Anytime someone learns something, they are suggestible to getting new information and changing what is already stored in their memory or their beliefs. That is a hypnotic state. People experience it every day, constantly, playing video games, watching the news, probably for worse. But anyway, watching a movie, reading a novel, sometimes music. So it's just a heightened imaginative and learning state that allows people to learn, or more importantly, unlearn things more easily and naturally. So really effectively, what we're doing is we're helping people regain control over their own mind. We don't control anyone's mind. We help them access a state of mind that is very normal, that everyone experiences all the time, or a number of times a day. We're just giving them back, putting them back in the driver's seat. And so that instead of living at the effect of something going on in their mind that they don't understand and they can't control, they can regain control of it, and they can align their responsiveness with whatever their long-term goals are for health or career or relationships.
I love that. In interest of time, I have just two more questions for you,
Mm-hmm.
Todd. And one is, and I'm really excited to hear your answer, is why is how you talk to yourself so important? Because I know there's a lot of people that out there that are very critical of themselves. I know I have been guilty of that myself. And, I'm really hard on myself. But for others, it could be negative self-talk, chronic negative self-talk. So why is the way you talk to yourself important?
Okay, so I'm going to say that negative self-talk is actually really helpful in a lot of ways. And I think that negative should not be seen only as negative. That may not be what you expected me to say, but when someone is constantly experiencing self-doubt or self-criticism, I think it's important to see that as feedback, and it is a reflection of a reaction to something that the person is thinking subconsciously, meaning they may not be aware of it, but often when someone is like, I can't do that. Like even imposter syndrome, for example, a common issue I see when I work with executives or high performers, people who are pushing the boundaries of what they can do, and they're challenging themselves. They're often experiencing a lot of self-doubt, which can lead to procrastination and hesitation and difficulty having confidence and focus and all of that. And really, a lot of it is because they have unrealistic expectations they're putting on themselves. So in a way, the self-doubt is a balancing act to excessive positivity, or maybe they're too high on themselves in other areas. So if someone thinks, "Oh, I'm the greatest person in the world. I'm the smartest person ever." Well, obviously, if you were, if you were to just to tell yourself that, you would hear an intuitive voice say, "No, you're not. Look at all these examples of how stupid you've been. Look at all these dumb things you've done." And if you focus on the negative, you might say, "God, I'm so hard on myself. Why do I do that? I got to get rid of that negativity." But the negativity is a reaction to being excessively positive. So we need to say, what is causing us to react negatively? And for a lot of people, it is a hidden pride, for example, that then creates a visible shame. So we need to balance things out. So we're always balancing ourselves. We just may not be aware of it because one of it is conscious and one is subconscious. I mean, this is a whole conversation on its own, but the polarity between these different states, we blame people. Effectively, it's because we feel guilty about something we've done, but we don't consciously acknowledge, and we see it projected on someone else. We get angry at them. Or we feel ashamed of something because we're judging that quality or that action. And then we see it in someone else who reminds us of ourselves like a mirror. And then we blame or get angry at that person. And that can lead to resentment and reactivity. But ultimately, we're judging ourselves. So there's a lot of this. It also is if someone learns growing up, you're not good enough, then they can be replaying that story in their head. But you can't think of what not good enough means without getting a sense of what the opposite is. And so when someone, coming back to what you said, what we tell ourselves subconsciously is going to dictate how we feel and how we act. It's not about negative as the problem. It's imbalanced, because there are people who are delusionally positive and happy and all that they think they're supposed to be happy all the time. And you see it on LinkedIn all the time or social media, publicly facing positive, everything is great, negative and really depressed privately. Mm-hmm. So there's this persona that people like to project that is not aligned with their authentic self. And the greater the gap between the public facing persona, the outward layer, the mask, and the inner self, the greater the distance between them, the greater the amount of shame and anxiety typically forms. And that's one reason why, for example, celebrities more often than not, compared to other people, tend to have substance issues and high risk behavior because of that challenge. So negative thinking is very helpful as long as you use it as feedback. And the key is not to be positive; it's to be balanced. And the work that we do, of course, can help shift all of that subconsciously to where people can sustain a more balanced framework automatically, and then as a result, be less emotionally reactive to things.
Yes, the harmony of it all. And I absolutely love that you called this out, because I see the same thing. There's so much toxic positivity out there, and we know dark because of light. We know grief
Yep.
because we know love. And that duality, that the spectrum of human emotion, if you will, is so important. And like you said, it's not about being negative or positive, but it's having that distinction, and what, up is because of down.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Oh, Todd, well, I have one more question for you, but I
Sure.
feel like
Yeah.
that was like your mic drop moment. Um, I typically end our Tactical Harmony podcast with this question, which is, if no one were to listen to any part of this podcast except for this very clip, what would be one message or takeaway that you would like to leave our audience with here today?
Embrace your humanness and your imperfections, because we're all human, we're all imperfect, and that is how we are meant to be. And so the more we can accept ourselves with all of our idiosyncrasies or perceived flaws, the more compassionate we can be for ourselves and more accepting we can be of others. And so the most important thing I would say is, first, come to understand why you do what you do, why you respond the way you respond, whether it's in general understanding human behavior. We have like 150 videos on our YouTube page with a variety of educational topics, or it's specifically understanding what in your past has led you to think, feel, and respond in a certain way. And even before you try to change any of that, come to understand it and then work on accepting it, at least as you're human. You're not supposed to be perfect. Let's stop trying to pretend like we're freaking perfect and everything, because people do that when they are ashamed. They have to go and showboat and boast about how great they are because they're ashamed of their imperfections. If we can accept that, then we don't overcompensate. And that's one of the key ways of balancing. So I would say, become self-aware and then practice, learn, embrace self-acceptance. If you can do that, then the internal conflict between conscious and subconscious goes down, and the interpersonal conflict, which leads to most of the problems we have in our world, that should go down as well. That's what I would say.
Hmm.
I think I just did.
You did. It was amazing. Know thyself. Oh, this is wonderful. Todd,
Know thyself and accept thyself. Easier said than done, but that I think should be the goal.
yeah, if it were easy, everyone would be doing it, right? Yes. Know thyself and accept thyself. Todd, where can we find you? I know you referenced your YouTube and I know you have a website, but
Yep.
if whoever's listening to this right now, they want to reach out to you and your practice and your wife, where can we find you?
Yeah. So our website is goodwinhypnosis.com. And we have links to our YouTube page on that website, as well as a description of the different issues we work on and we can help people with. And, a lot of stories from past clients describing their journey and what their challenge was and how they were able to overcome it. Just because a lot of people think they're alone and no one could understand their situation. And most people are surprised how common but unspoken a lot of these challenges are.
I love it. Todd, thank you for everything that you do for the world. I appreciate this so much. I know our audience is going to absolutely love this episode. So, from my heart to yours, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate you.